You have launchers that cost less because you have now a SpaceX reusables and other countries also launching at lower cost. And therefore, the insurance policy has to be reduced in the same level. So that is what happens in mature industries. Advantage there is that the risk underwritten are more known, and you have a track record with the satellite builder plus with the launcher. So it's more business as usual. The problem is that the policies are going down. And then you have the second part that is the new space and new entrants. And these companies, they are kind of new in the segment, and therefore they bring a full spectrum of new risk, from the quality of the team, the project management, where they buy the components, how is the satellite assembled, how are they organized, how are they, let's say, planning their orbits. So it's a complete new world of risks for insurers. So insurers have a big challenge in understanding the risk and underwriting the risk. And then the other challenge is how to price it, because new space business models are kind of not yet proven. So you can't afford to pay a big premium. So there is, let's say, a learning process that needs to happen in both sides, on the side of the new space companies, on the side of the insurers that are underwriting risk for this new business. So that's what I see the industry is going to, let's say, in new space, you have lower value at risks, because usually the missions or the satellites or the spacecraft are cheaper, but you are onboarding a full range of new risks. So, as I say, the insurance in the space is definitely a growing industry and a huge opportunity, but it comes with big challenges. And you have these two speeds: the mature part of the industry and the completely new newcomer.
Absolutely, absolutely, Maria. I think the insurance industry. I mean, not. I mean, they of course they are knowing the complexity in covering such risk, and also when we're actually witnessing a great amount of innovations happening in the industry, particularly when we see the introduction of the space tourism by Virgin Galactic. I think there are a whole lot of new risk that is coming on board, which not just difficult, but the industry have not yet analyzed on how they would be underwriting such risk from now. So it's a very interesting thought. Thank you, Maria. Um, so Maria, if we in last couple of months, so to be precise, end of 2019, the Lloyd's of London released a groundbreaking space insurance policy, announcing that it will be releasing a space insurance policy with the aim of entering a growing industry that could help send its profit to the moon. So there's some interesting stuff that the Lloyd's of London are trying to portray there. So the policy that will be available through Lloyd's under the Lift Space Initiative, which they have coined it, with policies worth more than $25 million, offered by 18 insurance syndicates operating out of the London insurance market. So, according to you, what are the key considerations these insurers must look into to broaden their scope for the future? I mean, we all know the Lloyd's of London their primary working model is through syndicates, and how the syndicates come together, not just with a pool of money to cover, but also how the underwriters and actuaries also gets involved. So, what's your views on that?
Yeah, I think this is a great initiative to enable new space. And I saw that their policies are for spacecrafts lower than 300 kilograms. Um, so first, one thing is when we talk about new space, what is the opportunity there? So I see four main, let's say, new categories of new space missions. So first is by, let's say, or for example, UK is a pioneer in space law. And that has made that a lot of new space companies are there because it makes it easier for them. Also, there are a lot of companies that even do satellite as a service or launch as a service or satellite control as a service. So we are witnessing what is called the democratization of a space, where a lot more players can build business around new space. So that is the democratization. And the barriers of entry to this segment that before were really, really high are getting lower and lower. And we will see more and more players and more business models rising there. So one is the democratization of space. The second one is that now the trend is constellation business. And I think as insurer, you need to see it as a whole, as a program, not as an individual asset, but as a constellation. And now we see that the business that are, let's say, getting into profitable, um, into profits, let's say, are more the business of constellations, being communications, being constellations for IoT, constellations for 5G, or more on the Earth observation type of satellites, like a Planet or Spire. Then the third one is technologies enabling what we were always dreaming, which is for example, in-orbit servicing. So how to repair a satellite that is in orbit. And we saw that some weeks ago when Intelsat satellite was repaired in orbit. And there is a lot of thoughts in if refueling satellites in orbit. So this is a big new opportunity as well, and it's very interesting for the mature players. And finally, what you were just mentioning, the space tourism and the space resource mining and all these kind of missions that are, let's say, completely new. So I see these three opportunities. But of course, all of them, they are really, really capital intensive. So there is a big need of collateral for these missions. So this brings huge opportunities and this brings huge challenges. So I think that insurers and underwriters, they need to probably introduce new skills in their companies. I know that, for example, Lloyd's, they have a very strong technology team to analyze, model, assess this kind of new space products. But I think it's even not enough because in each each of the points I mentioned, each of the 4 points, are an industry by itself with a complete different kind of risks. So yeah, I think companies, in order to be more, let's say, profitable, you need to get a better understanding on the risks you want to underwrite. And at the same time, we all know that this new Constellation Business and these new missions, they have still not a proven business model. So if you, as insurer, have very high price policies because you are taking into account all potential risks, then it's no longer useful because companies will not be able to afford it. So there needs to be a balance between, let's say, profitability and not being able of underwrite the risk. So I think insurers, instead of going to high price policies for small players or for a handful number of players, will go for lower policies for much more bigger number of players. And they need to decide on what they want to specialize themselves. But I'm a truly believer that insurance is an enabler for new industries.
Absolutely, absolutely, Maria. I mean, the insurance industry, I think it's one of the, or the only rather, sector out there who actually helps others to enable, or rather cover risk to enable their daily functions in a much more financially stable manner. So, I mean, there's a couple of good points raised out there. Firstly, we are quite it's kind of a new learning that we have gained today on the in-orbit repairs or the refueling, as you said. That's something new that I think most of us have learned today. Um, and as you said, the capital intensiveness, I think that I mean, equally is very much significant for the insurers. And that is one of the reasons I think the premiums are also quite high, and which restricts many of these space agencies to opt for an insurance coverage. I think both of these matters something that the insurance professionals must look into. So moving on to the next question, Maria. According to you, what are the top risks facing companies in the space industry, and what should risk managers consider when buying a space risk cover?
Yeah. So here my view, it's a simple view. It depends.
Right.
And I say it because, I mean, for example, for a satellite mission, that is, let's say, my cup of tea, if I can say so.
Okay.
We have the known risk. It's pre-launch risk, launch risk, third-party liabilities, asset damage. Then we can go to non-meeting contractual obligations, having business interruptions, and therefore loss on revenue. And now the cyber risk, more for governments, and all these kind of risks. So there are many, many risks. And if you ask me, what are my top risks, or what are the top risks of any company, new space company or a space company? So if I were the risk manager, I think the top risk really, really, really depends on each company.
Right.
Because if, again, for example, if it's mature, I will put some examples so that so that I can explain myself better. So if I'm a risk manager of a mature company, I have a good let's say, level of confidence in the company building properly the satellites. So pre-launch and launch will be more mitigated. So I have some confidence in that the risks are, let's say, lower. Of course, if this company decides, as we did, we or SES was the first company to launch a satellite that was SES-10 with a reusable rocket. So it was the first time Falcon 9 was reused to launch a satellite. So there, as a risk manager, you are probably, for that mission, that will be one of your top risks. But will not be the same risk next time you launch a satellite. If you launch it with, for example, Ariane 5, that you know that has a 99% or whatever success. But if I'm a risk manager of a new space company, I look at the team, and this team is all coming from the telecom industry, but on the mobile phones. So I know they are good engineers, but I'm not confident that they know how to build a satellite that is proven to survive space conditions, for example. So then I will put more my top risk will be more in that regards. So I think it really depends on the company.
Yeah.
So it's good to identify all your risks, and then as a risk manager, you have to analyze what are your top risks. It could be as well in your business plan, because you are not confident, you have no anchor customers, you depend on something, but you don't have secure revenues. So you want to, let's say, put the stress on the business interruption, losses revenue, or something like that. Or is your first mission and your customer is putting a lot of penalties if you don't deliver? So it will be more on not meeting contractual obligations. So I think as a risk manager, it really depends on your mission.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. If we look at the space industry, till today, the technological failure is something, that is the major uh, risk factor that the agencies are looking at. And contingency measures are somewhat, or I would say, at a huge percentage, are difficult to find and certainly more expensive to fund. So I wonder how the insurance companies, or even in hand with the reinsurers, would try and develop the capital to cover such kind of a risk that would actually help the industry to move on with a better R&D and financial stability for the future.
Yeah.
What do you think on this, and how can that be governed well, or rather managed well?
Yeah, so I mean, again, I see there the difference between well-established, mature companies in a space compared to new space. So we know that the new space, or at least it's predicted that the new space will be the next $1 trillion business. So definitely there is not enough innovation or working together type of, let's say, I don't see that much happening.
Right, right.
And you see Lloyd's is one of the pioneers and their syndicate structure. And what I see is that, for example, again, mature companies in a space, or companies that are used to this high capital intensive industries, they are moving a bit towards the captive market, where they kind of they protect themselves. They create the mechanism to protect themselves. Because at the end, you are the one that knows your business the best. So I see in the mature space, captives arising. But this is not the same for new space. So, yeah, I think there is a lot to do in terms of insurance industry. That and another point is that insurance industry is heavily regulated, as we all know.
Right.
And it's a lot of high barriers of entry, especially in capital requirements. So I think that insurance companies have to work more with insurtech type of companies to be able, because the problem is that insurtech, they might have this let's say out of the box thinking, or they might come from a space industry and being much more specialized, but it's very unlikely that these companies will have the financial opportunities to become an insurer. So I think it's required more and more that, I mean, at least for this new space business, the working hand in hand insurance with insurtech type of companies to be able to bring the best of the two worlds, and then do new models for new ways of underwriting, new ways of doing risk scoring, new ways of analyzing risks, being more specialized to the type of missions, because you will not do the same in manned missions like a space tourist compared to let's say an in-orbit servicing. So yeah, I think there is a lot of work to be done, and I encourage both insurtechs and traditional insurance to work more hand in hand to be able to advance quicker in this space.
Right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We do know there are just couple of handful of insurers or reinsurers like AXA, Hanover Re, Swiss Re. So it's just couple of them who are actually in the space, kind of covering the risk, be it pre-launch or in orbit or any sort of a liability coverage. But it is largely not uh, in a position that is accessible by many of the country's space agencies or even the private sectors like the Virgin Galactic, Virgin Orbit, or even Elon Musk company.
Yeah.
Right. So, as you mentioned, a very critical point out here, which is the captive insurance. So, I personally feel the captive insurance would be one of the a brilliant way to go ahead when we talk about an high intensive, high capital intensive industry. So if even in COVID-19 situation, when we see a lot of healthcare sectors in the United States, they are they are not able to manage the kind of losses they're going through, and at the same time they have to run their operations smoothly. So the only ones who are able to somehow manage their losses is the healthcare units who has their own captives who are self-insured. Otherwise, it is actually difficult for them. So it equally as applicable for the space industry, be it for spacecraft or the satellites or any other equipment. So it's a very well raised point out there, Maria. Thank you for that. So
Yeah.
Maria, as you mentioned, also the insurtech elements. I was just coming to it. So we have seen insurtech in many industries. For example, motor insurance, agriculture, marine insurance. So we have some of the well-known insurtech startups out there doing some phenomenal job. Like for example, we have Lemonade, who has brilliantly modeled a car insurance policy where a policy holder would have actually got their claim amount back after after an accident happened in just 4 seconds. So it just the accident happened and the policyholder didn't even know what to do, and he just sees the claimed amount getting credited to his account. So that is something a brilliant customer service. And in marine insurance, you have InsureWave doing a brilliant job in analyzing the riskiness of sailing in various areas through blockchain and IoT and other satellite technology. And then you have Etherisk from Germany doing a great job in the agricultural space. So in the space industry, we have not much, heard about how insurtech actually is playing a role. How their technologies like blockchain or any sort of automations or IoTs, oracles. How exactly do you think the as you already mentioned, but can you give us like some examples of any of the insurtechs who has done that, or there are yet to be any such firms or startups to come up, or any sort of a proof of concept that is going on there?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, the problem is that yeah, the how you could the damage the I not this word, but the thing at risk, the value at risk. Sorry, that's what I wanted to say. The value at risk is much, 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 much higher um, in a space, and that's why there is not much insurtech as such in the space industry. What it is the, let's say, uh, insurtech companies that are not really offering insurance to the end customer, but are bringing new components to the insurers. So it's more the ancillary, not ancillary, but the, for example, in insurance, not a space, but in insurance, there is a lot of innovation of new companies, new insurers that are doing risk underwriting in new ways. A lot of parametric, as you mentioned, also blockchain and Lemonade. For example, Lemonade, their business model is fee based. It's not in the loss ratio. It's fee. It's a fee
Right,
base.
right,
That's why most of the premium goes to compensate the loss. But of course, these are, let's say, much lower value at risk. And therefore, you can see players that can bring a model out of this with the loss of numbers and all these kind of things. But in a space, first, you still don't have the law of numbers. Second, the value at risk is huge. And third, the capital requirements are really high. And that's why I don't think it's easy for InsurTech to be active as an insurer in the space industry. What I think is that they can bring a lot of value to, as you say, to Hanover Re, to Swiss Re, to enable them to look at the new risk in a different way, or understand better the risk, or bring this knowledge to them, and therefore work hand in hand in order to provide this kind of products. But and yes, new technologies can bring in principle, they can lower the price, and they can bring more transparency. They can enable new ways of underwriting, like parametrics. But of course, I think a space industry is a bit far away from us in terms of distance. So when something happens in a space, in order to assess what happened, I mean, if there is a claim, to do this claim handling is it's really challenging. So I think that the space industry can be broken down in all these components: underwriting, claim processing, and many things, and bring a lot of value from insurtech startups. But for an insurtech startup to become an insurer and to give or to provide products to the industry is very complicated, and the barriers are very high. This being said, I'm also not, let's say, very knowledgeable in terms of what is going on in the space. For example, for these small micro nano satellites being launched, and if there is some innovative things out there, because I think that will be the way to start for insurtech that want to enter as insurance in this space, ensuring the low cost type of missions to gain knowledge, to gain traction, and then over time go to higher leagues.
Right, right. Of course. So what we're looking out here for the insurtech that is actually making a difference is the capital element, and of course the modeling approach and the criticalness of the space industry, the risk actually that ideally pops up from that space. So that's quite a good, interesting thought, Maria. And I think the insurance space, the way they are coming up. There would be some sort of an investor interest as well, and we just have to wait and watch how things moves in there. So, Maria, the last question of our talk today is, as we have already discussed, that there is a vast number of innovations that is happening there in the space sector. So, to cope up with that, how do you think, or rather, what should you advise to the insurance sector that they should also change to keep the pace with the space in the space activities? So, ideally, do you think the sector is innovating enough to manage such space risk effectively? I mean, I know we have covered some element of it, of course, but any key advice that you have for the professionals in the industry?
Yeah. So I think it's not only for the insurance industry, but for the space. I think that, and I'm really convinced that bringing insurance to the space industry more and more will enable the growth of this segment. So I really believe that insurers and space companies and space agencies should work more together, more like one team, in order to, let's say, like the insurance should be embedded in the company.
Yeah.
And then have this cross learning where the company understand or much better the risk, and the risk manager is more knowledgeable, because not every company in a space has good risk managers. So first, to upskill the risk manager from the company, and the company itself and the board of the company, and on the other hand, on the insurance side, so that the team working with these space companies understand better the risk, understand better how to assess the claim or the loss, and write and do the underwriting, let's say, accordingly. But the problem of this approach is that it's not scalable. So I think it's a bit positive and negative, because I also believe that now with the more and more missions, you need to come to a point that underwriting is not a one-off, it's not a tailor-made, it's more scalable, like Deloitte's product. So I think there is kind of a trade-off to be done. One, more dialogue, more work together between space companies and insurers and reinsurers. And second, more working together between insurers and insurtechs.
Right, absolutely. I mean, we in the insurance industry, we are as of now also following a traditionally conservative mindset. I think we need to be more open-minded and adaptable to what is happening in the industry and how well we can do to cover better such risk and help mitigate those risks, and which in turn would enable this kind of industries to function in a much more efficient manner. Thank you, Maria. Thank you very much for enlightening us with such a wonderful insights on this industry, which most of us, of course, being a niche segment, would not be knowing much on it, and it has gave us a different perspective on it. Thank you very much. So everyone, we are done with the discussions for today, and I'm opening the panel for questions. Anyone have any questions? You can either put it on the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question to Maria, and she would be answering those.
Okay, put back my video. I mean, any question or thoughts or anything that comes to your mind, or things to further discuss.
Hi, Maria. This is Arun here. Thank you very much, Maria and Surya, for the brilliant discussion and valid points that it's not given the numbers are not there, and given the high quantity or the quantum of risk coverage that is there, it's not possible for each and every kind of insurtech companies to get in. But you made a point that unless the growth of insurance happens, the growth of industry will not happen. So my question is, who should take the lead in creating, like in business, it is always said that business has to be enabled. Who will play the role of the enabler here? Will it be any kind of an institution or a cluster like Luxembourg, an institution coming from there? Or would it be a company like Lloyd's, which is a major player who can take further initiative in bringing up this? Or would it be an individual like you or Surya? Is it an institution or a company or a group of people? That's the question. Going ahead.
So I believe, and again, this is my personal take, that things are always good when they are industry driven. So I would say that people like Lloyd's will be the ones. And by Lloyd's doing that, and by Lloyd's saying that entering this market, the revenues can go to the moon, then others will say, if Lloyd's is doing this, we should do it as well. And then also the investors will come and say, if Lloyd's thinks they are going to the moon, I want to be part of it. So it's a bit of fear of missing out. So I think it's these industry pioneers, the ones that will pave the way for the others.
Great. Thank you very much, Maria.
Any more questions?
I mean, one thing that, while you think about your questions, one thing that we do in SES, we have insurance days. So once a year, there is, I think, 2 days called the insurance days. And I believe that is the same for Intelsat, Eutelsat, and all the big ones. And during these days, it's an open forum between the insurance industry and reinsurance and the captives that we work with, and all together discuss what is new in the industry, how things have performed in the past, what are the new challenges. So I think these forums are also very positive in order to, let's say, have a win-win situation.
Yeah, that's true.
Any other questions? Anyone from the panel out here?
Well, anyway, if you have an afterthought or a follow-up question, I think you can reach me definitely. So don't hesitate if you want to put a question even after.
I think that's a very good point, Maria. I think someone wants to speak. Yeah, so anyone have any questions post this webinar, you can reach out to the email address mentioned in the registration, or we will reach out to you and then we'll connect you to Maria for that. I think that's fantastic, Maria. It was a real honor and a privilege to have you for today's session. Thank you for your time and the wonderful thoughts, and we look forward to connect with you further in future events and sessions on this particular space. Also, we do have events, as Sujit already mentioned, that the European Parliament on an annual as an annual event every year. So we would also will connect with you and have you for the event, and we look forward for more such interactions. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, and I hope that this was interesting for you and bringing some new angles also from the space part.
Absolutely, Maya. That was really engaging.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Arun, do you would like to just conclude the session?
Yep. Thank you very much, Surya. That definitely was a lead worth it when Maria initially asked about why we would like to, why we ventured such a niche topic. It is, Maria, for this very reason that apart from institutions and the industry and the forums, individuals with interest and passion and belief can also create new momentum in and directions for growth, and that can create an entirely new future for all of us. So thank you very much, Maria, for taking out time, and thanks, Surya, for coordinating. Thanks, Sujit, for organizing the session, and thanks the participants as well. Thank you very much. And yeah, we couldn't put together larger audiences, but now that we have started, I'm very sure, and Maria, that from European Center for Business Industry, we will work more closely with you and see that the word and the opportunity reaches to much wider audiences. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Have a nice rest of the Saturday, and take care.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. And you too. Stay safe.
Thank you.
And take care.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.